And this one is a competitive city building game where players are going to be growing the city land from this central city center board, and then you're going to be building different roads and buildings as well as forests out on those pieces of land. And you're going to be gaining rewards based on your contributions, but the main goal here is to try and attract residents into the city. And there's going to be a bunch of different residence cards that players can acquire throughout the game. And they're going to have different requirements as to what they are looking for in order to move into the city. But what I really like about this is that those requirements also dictate which players are going to be getting rewarded based on which players were able to contribute to the region where that resident is moving in. This means that if you're the one selling the house to that resident, you want to sell it to a resident that's going to be scoring off of more of the things you contributed rather than your opponents. And I think this game's got a lot of other cool ideas going for it as well, and I'm a big fan of how everything is so well intertwined. I think this is going to offer a lot of impactful opportunities for player interaction without it being directly confrontational. And I'll get into how exactly all of this plays in just a second here, but because of everything I just said, this one is also my personal pick of the week. And the way the game plays is that each player is going to be starting with some coins and resources as well as some warehouse tiles in order to store those resources, with each tile only able to hold one color of resource at a time. Players will also have some building tokens which they're going to be using to build the different floors of the various buildings. And then each player will also have some workers which they'll be able to use in a couple different ways. Either you can assign them to different action locations in order to gain an ongoing ability, or you can use them as part of constructing a building. And the way that the players are going to be taking their actions in this game is through this action board. And this is an aspect of the game that I really like, because there's going to be 4 specific tiles that are always included in every game, and these are the tiles at the 4 corners. But then the remaining action tiles are just going to be randomly drawn and put in a random order, meaning that not only can the order be different from game to game, but you can also have completely different actions. When it's your turn, you can move your pawn any amount of spaces clockwise around the board. You're just not allowed to stop on any locations that have another player's piece on them. And yes, if you do want to take the same action twice in a row, you are allowed to go completely around the board in order to take that action again, but there are a couple reasons that you may not want to do this, because each time you pass the starting tile, you're going to have to pay taxes, and you're also going to have to pay the wages for your workers. Also, any of your workers that you've assigned to the various action locations for special abilities will come back to you once you pass them with your pawn. But these actions allow players to do all sorts of different things like buy or sell resources, and the market is located in the center of the tiles here. And what's cool about the way that this market works, and you can see on the left-hand side here, is that the value of the resource is actually going to go up when there's less of that resource available in the market. But another action players can perform is to gain or plant trees. And what's cool about the way that this works is that you'll actually want to create a little bit of a supply of trees before you actually plant them, because the more that you plant in a single action, the more benefit you'll be able to get from that action. There is also an action that allows players to gain additional warehouse tiles, giving you a little bit more flexibility with your resources. And of course, you can pay resources in order to add additional land tiles around the perimeter of the city board. And whenever you do that, you're going to be adding your colored token to that board to signify that you are the owner of that land. And the reason that's important is because you're going to be gaining money anytime that a building is built there. Another thing to note about that is that some of these building locations are also designated as municipal buildings, and these are just going to get automatically built as soon as you're able to build a road in front of it. This is nice for you because you still do get paid for that. And there is also an action that allows you to pay to build roads out on the board, and anytime you do that, you're going to be moving up the road tracker. And the reason that you want to do that is because the further you move up on that track, the more and better benefits you'll be able to get. But players can also use these actions to pay to construct floors on new or existing buildings, and there are a few different types of buildings that can be built, with each of them having a different requirement of floors that must be constructed before it's considered completed. Building a floor does gain you victory points, but then also depending on the type of building that you're choosing to build, you're going to have some optional secondary actions that you can perform specific to that type. Another action you'll want to perform is to gain additional residence cards because, like I said, this is one of the main ways to score victory points throughout the game, and each of these is going to have different requirements that they need fulfilled in order to move into a completed building on your plot of land. And like I said before, this also dictates who is going to be getting which benefits depending on who contributed to those requirements in that region. These are also worth negative victory points at the end of the game, so you don't want to be getting too many of these cards if you don't think you're going to be able to find a home for them. And that is one of the final actions that you can perform, is to sell a house from land you own to one of the residence cards that you have in your hand. This is going to be gaining you money and victory points according to that card, but then it's going to be paying out bonuses to each of the other players that contributed to the different buildings and features in that region. The game continues like this over a series of rounds, and then the player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game. You're going to be tallying up your victory points from the points that you've earned throughout the game, but then also adding additional points for the amount of coins that you have at the end of the game, any bonuses from your played residents, and then, like I said, losing victory points for any residents that you have left over. I'm really interested in this one, and if you are too, you can follow along, and I'll have that linked in the description down below.